And welcome again to the Fun and Victorious podcast. I'm your host, Andy the Game Maker. And on this episode, I interviewed my big brother and my best friend, Anthony. We discussed our time on the game show, Cherries Wild. We talked about the auditioning, the interviewing, and finally even just playing the game to win the big money. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. There's a lot of great knowledge. We even talked about his move to Texas from this past year and what that looked like. A lot of really great nuggets of information. And we even tested his knowledge on wrestling, which was really fun. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. But as you know, before we do that, I need to make money.
Crypto Cartel is a 2 to 8 player game where players must work to build up their own resources in order to accumulate as much cryptocurrency while playing through the main deck 3 times. Players earn the ability to earn cryptocurrency as they collect cards of similar types and then exchanging them during the game. Simultaneously, the cryptocurrency gives each player the ability to earn cards from the Silk Road deck. These cards give players the ability to attack their opponents, defend any impending attacks, or fend off the DEA. The DEA cards appear in the main deck during the second and third rounds of the game, forcing a player to give up their most valuable production line. You must develop production lines of multiple cards in succession as quickly as possible, and in order to do this, you must make effective trades with other players. But be careful, get too far ahead and everyone will go after you.
To secure your copy of Crypto Cartel, please go to my website at AndyTheGameMaker.com. Each copy you purchase helps support the content of this programming. You can also donate at the link in the description below, but more importantly, please leave likes and comments for this video. And if you don't mind, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date with all the content. And without further ado, let's start the show. Again, thank you everyone for joining me for the Fun and Victorious podcast. I'm on today with one of my best friends, the one and only Anthony. Anthony, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and join me on my podcast. It's so great to have you, my loving brother, my older brother, and pulled into the Fun and Victorious universe, if you will. So thanks. I really appreciate that. How's your day been so far?
Yeah, well, first, it's awesome to be here, brother. You know, I love you. I think you're doing an incredible job, not with just this, but everything else you're doing with all of your projects, and I'm extremely proud of you. And I might be your older brother, but I told you before, man, you are an inspiration to me as well. So I am honored to be here. I'm happy to be here, and honestly, on YouTube or not, I love chatting with you anyway, because we always have the best time, and really, our conversations are endless. So
for sure,
kind of fun to record them and play it back one day and say, hey, what are they talking about this time? So happy to be here, man. Thank you. As far as how my day's going, my day's going extremely well so far. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it's a Saturday, Easter weekend. It's good. I just spent some time with our sister, Alita, aka Legal Bites. She was out here on the West Coast for a little bit. I'm gonna jump on a plane, head back out to her studio, if you will, overseas. With
far away.
with Mr. Bites and Indian Homes and all them. So yeah. So but I want to ask you, I guess it's a good question to ask you out the gate, before, because I know there's some things we want to talk about on this particular episode, but you are actually one of very few, not to make it seem like there aren't very many people who've done this, but who've actually moved from California to Texas. What has that been like for you so far out the gate?
So I wouldn't say I'm few. There's actually plenty, as you probably know.
Few that I actually know.
That you know. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's definitely become a statistic. Okay. So everyone that I live nearby, everyone knows at least. So everyone I've come in contact with, whether it's at work, in my neighborhood, or just like chatting at HEB, which is a local market, they all know somebody that has come from California. And so, like, my neighbor to the left, he actually came out in 2003 from San Jose. My neighbor across the street from Long Beach, my neighbor right next door from West Covina, the neighbor next to him from Long Beach, and I think the neighbor next to him, they were in DC, but I think they made a stopover like in Sherman Oaks at some point for a couple of years. It's been great so far. And so just like there's just this, I mean, you feel like everyone keeps calling, Austin. I live in Austin, obviously. So Austin is, like the little California or the new California. We're all coming out here.
Right.
But it's for a reason, man. And it's been fantastic so far. Everyone is just so welcoming, regardless of the California label. Like, in fact, I've not had any kind of negative interaction with anybody from California, from being from California, as if they would have you believe, right? There's the whole lingo like, oh, don't California up my state. No one's told me that yet. And I actually moved here, to not do that. I moved here to be a Texan because I feel like just where we are today is just everything that they're doing here and living their life is just way more in line with what me and my family want to do.
Yeah.
Really mainly because of just the last few years. And, being in California, it's been problematic for my family and just a lot of people in general ever since this thing went down. So it's been wonderful. The sad part is, of course, is that we've left, pretty much Southern California, Los Angeles, where you live and your family and our parents, a lot of close friends, and including my wife. Her family's all there. So it's been a bummer to move away and not have the family over for like my daughter's birthday, which was, last week. It's like the first time that we've had like zero family there. But, and I know you understand, just you got to make decisions that you feel are best for your family. And of course, that is completely subjective to every family. Every family has a different need and just a different lifestyle that they want to live. Mine, at this time is led us here to Texas. And because of that, we feel good that we made a decision that's best for our family. And we're happy that we followed it from the seed, of a thought until actually being here, owning our first house, having a higher paying job that, challenges me and has a very, very high ceiling for my industry. And just, again, just being nearby a lot of neighbors that are just super friendly and just super community oriented. And, we live on a cul-de-sac too. So, which we've never done before. So like cul-de-sac living is like a different kind of living because it's almost like you get to kind of where the cul-de-sac starts, and it's almost like this little sub neighborhood because you can walk out in the middle of the street and you can just chit chat, and the only people driving really into your cul-de-sac, into your street, are the people that live there, right? So it almost becomes like this own separate little community of the people that live on the cul-de-sac, and there's really like this sense of like, hey, this is our cul-de-sac, this is where we all live, and let's all get together. So like tomorrow, which is Easter, we got invited to our neighbor's house 2 houses away. And I think probably that neighbor that's having us over is having like 4 or 5 different houses on the cul-de-sac also come over for Easter for a big brunch,
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Is there a common theme that when you've interacted with these other families who have come from California? It sounds like one was actually, a little bit earlier than you, for example, like almost like 20 years ago when they had to move. But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, it's always been kind of the same theme, which is like the affordability, right? It's just, I guess, California, even 20 years ago, was still one of the most least affordable places to live. So my neighbor came from like San Jose, and he's just like, hey, we moved out here because I could, my dollar goes farther, and I had more opportunities out here in Austin. So that is really first, the main common theme really is, hey, I can buy a house. I can buy a house on just my income. Like my wife doesn't need to work if she wants to stay home and take care of the kids, if that's her choice. My wife is doing that. We homeschool our daughters. I was not in a position at all. Yeah, thank you. I wasn't in a position at all to have a one income household and afford a house in Los Angeles, Southern California. So that really is a common theme too. So even my neighbors from like 2 houses down from Long Beach, or the one across from Long Beach also, they moved out here like 3-4 years ago before the pandemic. So them, same as I think, it was just like, hey man, it was easier lifestyle. Like hire, buy a house at that point for like $300K out here,
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I'm not surprised again, because it was, even for us to become homeowners, it was just, even with a VA loan, it was still super competitive, which is just ridiculous. And even now, just like, just seeing how expensive homes are, what's being asked of you to be able to live comfortably in California. The demands just keep going up and up and up. And it just kind of blows my mind, how many people aren't actually homeowners nowadays in California.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But I'm not surprised. I mean, but that's really awesome to hear that that things are really going well. You're really, meshing with people really well. I think it's super cool. Has there been any like negative? I don't want to focus on the negative necessarily, but are there any like, this is kind of caught us, off guard, during our move, during our transition? Wish I would have known about this. Maybe some advice you can give to someone who's about to move to California, like myself, or even Texas to be.
Yeah. So, so I will say this. I will say that the thing that's caught my wife most off guard has been the creatures out here. So there's lots of like insects and like snakes that, look, don't get me wrong, it's not like you open the back door and there's a jungle out there waiting to come in and kill you. Yes. But like we found like a garter snake, there's red, fire ants,
scorpions sometimes.
There can be scorpions. Fortunately, we found out that our dirt isn't like scorpion friendly. We found this in conversation. Like we live on like the side of the Interstate 35, where for some reason the dirt is just different, so we don't have scorpions to worry about. But there's like hawks, there's just different varieties of snakes, there's mosquitoes, strange like red wasps that fly around. So it caught my wife quite off guard, and she's just like, she's not a fan of bugs per se. So, but I will tell you, like, she has yet to see her first snake. We haven't really, we've killed maybe one fire ant hill, so it's not like anything is like overriding us. So, but aside from that, I mean, the weather too is also more humid, but it's to be expected. I mean, honestly, like California still is going to have the best weather no matter what. It's like any way you cut it, it's just still going to have the best weather, especially where you are. You're a little bit south of where we were. You go to San Diego, people will say San Diego has like just the greatest climate in the world, and I can totally see that, right? We have already had to deal with a tornado. So a tornado hit about a mile from our house, and that was like national news. Tornadoes don't normally hit like central Texas, like in Austin. So all my neighbors are like, hey, this is like the first time this has ever happened. We actually took shelter. So I made a joke to everyone. I'm like, hey, I've been here for like 2 months. I took cover for the first time. I lived in LA for like almost 20 years. Didn't take cover one time ever for the big one or an earthquake. You know what I mean? So
but there was that big earthquake about, I want to say like 3 years ago. Do you remember that one? There was a. You don't remember that one?
No. Like, where was it?
That was what that was like. It was like close to like 4th of July weekend. It was weird. It was 2 of them. I remember, 1, 2, maybe 3 of them, and I didn't notice 2 of them because they're during the day. I was in a pool one instance. I was driving the other instance so I couldn't really tell. But then there's a time where Mrs. the Game Maker and I were over with 2 friends. I love maintaining with the privacy, right? We're over with 2 friends playing some board games over at a buddy of mine's house, my buddy Joe and his wife, and we were playing, and his whole house starts shaking. It was like almost 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Did he have any damage? Like, was it like a damaging one?
Okay. No, so, but it was, I'm surprised.
It shook for a while. Okay, so I mean, we felt shakes, right? But there's been like 0 injury, 0 damage. We've never taken cover. It's like come and gone.
No,
you know what I mean? So you just kind of get used to it. You're like, oh, there's like a little rumble.
I bring up this instance because I found it to be very memorable. Not to say that earthquakes are all that occurring, and that was aside from that one, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the only time I can think about an earthquake that I experienced since I got moved back out to California, since I got out of the army. Everything else has been relatively non-existent, minor. I mean, tornadoes.
Yeah. Well, and then also
unless you're in Houston,
Yeah, and then also, last year Texas had that crazy deep freeze that was like a national emergency, and they had like a small one here right when I got here, like day 4 when I got here. And they're like, hey, the temperature is gonna go like to 18 degrees and freeze again. You gotta like blow out your pipes and all these things. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, right? I just moved into this new house, had construction going on. And like day 4, I'm like, everyone's like, all right, everyone's staying from work, then we go on the road. I'm like, what? So there's like strange weather, but it's not like, I mean, it can be extreme, but not really. So, to me, it's just like, hey, this is just like part of where you live, and, it's kind of how it is. But, getting back to just Austin in general, I think the reason why Californians are coming out here so much is, of course, again, it's cheaper, right? But the reason why Austin kind of attracts them more so than like Dallas or Fort Worth or even maybe Houston is because Austin does have more of a it's a little more liberal leaning per se, and I'm not necessarily no more leans liberal, by any means. I mean, I consider myself middle of the road, maybe leaning toward the right. But what I do like is it's just really diverse, right? You go to the city of Austin and they have stuff for everybody to do. And I've only seen like one person with a cowboy hat the whole time. Like you go to Austin, you don't really feel like you're in Texas, right? At all. Like it's like you see just like regular people going around. But aside from that, is that people were really, this is maybe where I was living in LA, but like people really just respect your decisions about what you want to do and how you want to do it. No one like is saying that you're wrong for choosing something. Everyone's like, okay, like, hey, if you feel like you need to wear a mask and come on the store, you can, but like, or you don't, right? And no one's gonna like get in your face about it. It's like, hey, you got your own decision to make. It's like you make that decision. You it's fine.
You live by the decision.
Yeah. So Austin has somewhat of a California mentality feel in terms of just the diverseness and just kind of like, the good side of being a little more freer thinking, where you have a lot of arts and a lot of music and just a lot of it's welcoming to everybody. So and people say it's like, oh, it's like turning blue and all this. I'm like, well, I mean, maybe, but you really can't tell, to be honest. Like, you just feel like it's a regular cool city. And it does have that small town feel, but it's still like a thriving city with like a thriving suburbs and all that.
So. No, because and what's interesting is I look forward to coming out to visit you guys soon.
Cool.
Obviously we have some fun summer activities here in June, but after that, babies and such, just at the least, my goodness. No, but in all seriousness, because the last time I was in Austin, it was about we're talking. Geez, it was like 10 years ago. Last time I was there,
because you were living in Killeen, right?
Well, Killeen, but then even like when I was at Fort Bliss, we actually made a trip back to Austin to go visit Anita when she was at law school for Thanksgiving weekend. Or even Easter, I think.
Man, was that 10 years ago?
It was like 10 years ago. It's crazy. It's like another lifetime. No, seriously.
It is another lifetime. I agree, man.
It's just crazy. But basically, I look forward to seeing the changes there, because one of the things I do remember, I'm not sure if you could speak to this, but I remember the traffic was getting worse around Austin as time went on. I'm not sure what your experience has been like with traffic with respect to, I mean, especially comparing to LA traffic.
Yeah, so everyone here will tell you that traffic is horrible. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, right? Because I can get door to door, like walk out of my office, walk into my front door in like 40 minutes at the end of the day. And to people that have been out here, that's like, oh my God, that's like so long, you gotta move. And I'm like, you don't understand, right? So I actually literally live 18 miles from my office to the house, 18 miles. I literally lived, when I was in LA, when I was living in Granada Hills, I was 18 miles from Granada Hills to the city of Santa Monica, where I worked for 10 years. That was also 18 miles. Before the pandemic, it took me 55 minutes in the morning, going home every day, an hour and 20 to get home. Here now, I'm at work within, 30 minutes in the morning and 40 minutes to get home. So I'm like, I'll do that all day long. Like 40 minutes, that's like that's my decompressing time. I can listen to a podcast. I can make a phone call. I can call you. I can call friends on the East Coast. I can just call whomever and catch up. Because, when you got a house full of children, like it's difficult to like try to catch up with a friend on a phone call because it's either too loud or the wife, is like, hey, I can use some help over here. Yeah. So I use that. I actually found it to be very not good to have that time. So everyone will say, everyone will tell you that, but it's all relative, right?
Yeah,
everything,
absolutely.
Coming from California, where everything is more expensive, everything is more congested, everything is more trafficy. This is like such a breath of fresh air, So it depends on who you ask. But as far as what you've seen in the last 10 years, when you come out again, you'll see that the downtown probably has a lot more sky rises. Like they've been putting up taller and taller buildings, what I'm told. And you'll see that the surrounding neighborhoods, right? So I live in Round Rock. The surrounding areas like Round Rock, Pflugerville, Cedar Park, Georgetown, those are all expanding and there's more stuff happening. So I guess when you were out here, you probably just saw, maybe just a long stretch of undeveloped land for a very long time. You'll still see that, but you'll now see, now your development will be there. The reason why I love where I live in Round Rock, and, I imagine, yes, it's going to get more dense over time, but we'll drive and we'll see a nice stretch of undeveloped land where it's just nice grass and trees. And then you'll see like your strip mall, and then like you'll see your HEB, and then some more of the development of houses. And then you got a long stretch of like open lands. And because there's really no mountains here, like in LA or Southern California, you see just a lot of sky. Like your view is just a lot of sky. And I just think it's beautiful, you know? So it's nice. You get that feel where things are kind of separated, but not too much. And you just get to see just a lot of just open space.
Yeah.
You know?
That's one of the,
nice.
That's definitely one of the best aspects of Texas, is that you can buy a huge lot of land for, you know, trying to be respectful, relatively next to nothing, comparatively speaking, for what you like, especially compared to California or some other places like, you know, huge metropolitan areas like New York City, for example. I mean, what you can get for like, say, for example, like $200,000, like it's a lot. You can get a lot in Texas.
Yeah, and I mean, you're definitely going to be a little bit further from the metropolitan centers per se, but again, it's like, you know, you can definitely get it for that price, and you'll just have to drive a little bit more, but it's almost impossible to get anything like that in Southern California, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I want to take a moment here to talk about, you know, one of my most memorable moments with you is having gone on Cherries Wild, and that whole awesome experience. That was a really great experience for myself. I'm sure you can say the same.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
yeah. And so what I want to do here is just, I want to take a moment just to kind of recapture that story just from start to finish, so people can understand. So just in case people are ever curious as to what it takes to get on a game show, I think this story is a really great example of what we did from from point A to point B, so to speak, from the audition all the way through to the end to going on the show, everything we had experienced. So Anthony, do you want to So how do you want to pick up this conversation? Where does the story begin?
So first I'll say this, right? Like, I don't know if you ever felt this way, but growing up watching game shows or whatever through the course of my life, I always wondered, like, where did they get these people from? Like, how does somebody get on The Price is Right? Like, how is somebody on Jeopardy? Like, are these real people? Like, to me, they are in themselves like their own mini celebrity, right? Because they're on TV and they're playing for a chance to win money. And to me, that's amazing. Like, how do you do that, right? It's actually more simple than one would think. And I think, to your credit, it's more of just, you just go for it. You just find when they're auditioning for the show and you do something. So you were the one that came out to me. Remember, you're like, hey, you audition for the show? And I'm like, yes, right? Like, whenever you ask me to do something, if I'm available, I'll jump at it, right? Again, being that I've had children for a bit, it's always difficult, but like, this seemed to kind of work out. I was like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's do it, right? And I remember, I think you said it was for trivia, and I'm like, hey, that's like my thing, man. Like, you know, to my detriment maybe, but like, you know, I know just a lot of strange things, whether it's pop culture or it's entertainment or even like, you know, history or just weird stuff. But yeah, I would just come out and say, like, it's really like, hey, just like, you can audition for any show. Just look when they audition and just make the effort to do that, and right, be yourself. And that's what we did when we put our audition tape out there, was just like, be yourself and maybe crank up the volume a little bit, right? Be yourself, crank it up, because it's got to project through, you know, the screen. And you know, one thing I will say, and you could probably speak to this too, is like, when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson started out wrestling, right? He was known as Rocky Maivia, very vanilla. And so he shot up to his superstardom, whether it was through wrestling and then into his film career, because he basically said, I was Dwayne Johnson, and then I turned up the volume to 100, and I became The Rock. And I popped every time. It became entertaining. And he was just being himself, and he just cranked it all the way up. And that's what me and you did on our audition tape. And even when we were playing the game, we had to be big every time, right? And we just had to be ourselves, but just like bring it every time. So that's what you do, you know. That's kind of how you make it work.
For sure. And then what was they part of it was in the process for the interview for going on the show, is they also wanted to find people with really unique stories. Do you want to take a moment to share what our unique story was, so people can understand how to maybe like set themselves up for success?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we went with the whole, you know, brothers from another mother story, right? Because if you go look at us, you look at us standing next to each other, you're not going to know that we're brothers. Like, I got an olive complexion. You know, you got more of the fair one. We have the same father. My mother, however,
but I still tan pretty well. I just want to put that out there. I'm not like my wife.
I know, but I'll always beat you in a tanning competition, right?
Yes, you will.
You know, if you ever see my tan line in summertime, it looks like I'm wearing like a suit of brown on my body, right? And so for the audience to know, my mother is South American, so that's where I kind of get my color from. But I think that was our thing, right? And on top of that
thing.
was the fact, on top of that was, I believe I'm 7 years older than you.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually grew up separately, right? I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in New Jersey, and I didn't meet you until I was like 20 or 21. I think you were 14.
21.
Our, Aunt Maria, our aunt on our father's side, was getting married, who lived in New Jersey, which is where I was living at the time. And you guys came to the wedding, and it was the first time I ever met you and our other brother Conrad and Alita, and I saw my dad again for the first time in like 10 years. So it was like this huge reconciliation, but also new beginning, because here I am like connecting with my dad for the first time in a very long time, and then just meeting you guys for the first time, because I knew that the three of you had existed, but you were in California, I was in New Jersey, and to me that was just a world away, right?
Yes.
Did I miss anything about our story that we?
No, that was accurate. And
Okay.
and they really enjoyed that. They really enjoyed who we were as human beings. Again, we were very personable too as well. We weren't dry about it, but at the same time, it's a very authentic story too. And I think that's kind of, I guess, a takeaway is that like we were just who we were. We just, they wanted to find that really special connection between two people, and that was it. And it's a really beautiful connection. And I you know what though, I mean, like some people grew up together and they have this, they grew up really close with one another. But I think that because that's our story, I think that's what makes our relationship more special in a lot of different ways.
Well, I mean, also, just hammer home the fact that I remember just me and you connected off the bat. And now, mind you were 14, I was 21. There's a 7-year age gap. But, I will always admit that I am always a child at heart. And the dumbest, most childish things will make me laugh every time, right? I mean, I'll fart in front of my daughters, and it's always a party, right? So me and you kind of connected right away. And I didn't have any, qualms about you being 14. In all honesty, I love the fact that I had younger siblings, 2 younger brothers, and I remember we just kind of just stuck right away. And then through that whole time, as I was basically moving from New Jersey to the West Coast, with a shop in Las Vegas, our relationship grew every single time, and we were just like our bond was just stronger and stronger. And we had some hiccups along the way, just here and there, but for the most part, you grew into being my best friend, and that 7-year age gap never really mattered at all. We were both still watching Beavis and Butthead together, and it was just as funny to me as it was for you, right? And other stuff like that, because that stuff is always funny.
For sure. But that's the thing though, is I think that I think you make a really good point though, is that when we were together, we really took we really took the time to enjoy each other's company, whether it's watching Beavis and Butthead, for example, or what have you. We always found something we always made the most of our time, and I think that was really good, especially since I was in the Army, right, for a good chunk of that, right, because it was. I mean, I was 14 when we first met, and then 4 years later, I was basically in the whole West Point system for a while, and then eventually became an Army officer. And then I got out, finally moved back to the West Coast, and then we had some good times together, growing up, or not growing up, I should say, like when I was trying to pursue a creative career. One of my favorite moments when I first came back was when I did the internship over at the Walt Disney Studios. I would stay at your place the night before, and we do like creative writing the night before together.
Yeah.
That was just so much fun, and those were days I will always remember, always cherish.
Don't forget, remember, I was living in Santa Monica, working for the city of Santa Monica, and you were working at a production studio in Santa Monica for like 6 months also.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, eventually it was in Santa Monica. After that.
Yeah, and we would actually meet for lunch, if you remember. You'd come over for lunch every now and then.
Yep.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. Because I remember thinking during that time, I'm like, man, this is like, I went from not living anywhere near you for so long, and now like here we are. It's like a random Tuesday night, and we would do some writing, and then we would play like Legendary, which is the deck building game. We would play like Legendary, or you would come over for lunch to my apartment at the time. That was awesome,
Yeah.
And it was I did not take it for granted either, because I just for some reason I just knew it wasn't going to be like easy as that. I wasn't sure if it was going to be easy like that ever again. And unfortunately, I was correct, because we've not lived near each other since then, or been anywhere within that vicinity that closely since then.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, that was such a good time. Okay, so then we did the audition. We went in. We gave our backstory. My life is interfering with my podcast. No, I'm kidding. It's all good. Hey, man, this is I don't care. It's my life. I don't care. It's just part of the show. People,
it's real life, man. It's real life.
Yep, I love it. So we submitted the audition videos. So like I went to your place, and that was another part of it too. Is our audition tape that we did. We actually took the time to do some really good takes to set it up to set ourselves up for success. And again, like I think one of the things that we emphasize, I mean, I guess you can kind of fill in the blanks, but it was mostly just trying to be humorous in a way. I mean, like how would you summarize that?
So I think we put together an audition tape where we came up with really obscure or funny trivia questions and answers, if you remember, right? And we had our reactions to it as well, right? It was like, I remember one was like, hey, did you know that Dwayne The Rock Johnson, before he was The Rock, his name was Flex Cabana, which is real. His name was Flex Cabana in a smaller wrestling promotion. Of course, I would only know that. But like weird stuff like that, and we would just like have these like big reactions in the face, like oh, like I didn't know that, right? And but really it was not so much that we were having these reactions, but it was the chemistry we had with each other. And really, like whenever me and you get together and we get going, like the energy picks up and we just kind of feed off each other and we just get sillier and sillier. And that's really what we were able to capture on that video, on the camera, on the audition film, right?
Yes.
Which can be hard to do, but in all honesty, it's like I know I don't have any problems about being recorded, being live, neither do you. And we don't have any kind of inhibitions about being on camera, then you just like you're good to go. You just let it fly, and we were able to present that.
Case in point, we're doing video podcast.
And they liked it. Like the producers, the audition producers that saw it could feel our chemistry, could see how good we would be on the show, and so they called us in for that first round, if you remember.
Yes, that was great. And then we did. We had it was like felt like what 2 or 3 separate interviews along the way
on like Zoom, right? Was it? They were like Zoom. Yeah. It was like that leads to it could have been a third, but we had to continue to tell our story. So by the time that we actually got to the game show and told it, we've already told our story that we presented here before, about being both mother and mother, so many times that we had a lockdown. But and then they also ran us through a couple of like the game scenarios, like, okay, we're gonna play a fake game, and give us your reaction. So we did that a number of times as well. But which is good. That's what you got to do, right? Because they want to know what you're gonna look like when you actually play the game. So we went through kind of a live audition for that.
And I remember this as well along the way when we were interviewing, because the very first interview was with the casting agency is what it was. Because the solicitation originally came from a casting agency, and then it was passed off to the production company where they're like, okay, we think Anthony and Andy would be really great on the show, so we recommend them. I think what they do basically is that the casting agency will do all the marketing. They'll send out their emails or texts. Which is basically what I got. I got one of those spam texts say, hey, you want to be part of a trivia show for it was pop culture trivia. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And I responded back because I was like, I'm full of useless information. This would be perfect for me. I would love to capitalize on this. And sure enough, it worked out well.
Sure enough, it worked.
For once.
Who knew, right?
But so we did that, which was really great. And then we did I think that was again, we did the auditions with the production team. I feel like it was just the first interview we did was just to confirm, yes, the information we got about Anthony and Andy was correct. And then we did, I think, maybe like a second one together where we again simulated the game, I think, if that wasn't the same one. And then we did separate ones, one-on-one.
Well, I think before I think it was, and I don't mean to cut you off, I think it was casting agency first where we did one where we did it a fake game. Then they said, cool. Then I think the next one was the actual
they did it.
Actual network. I think it was Fox themselves, the producers at Fox who produced the show. And it was oh my gosh, it was this woman, I totally forget her name, that grew up in the town next to me in New Jersey. She had grown up in like Freehold, and I had grown up in Marlboro. And she's like, oh my gosh. And so we were like chit-chatting about that for a while, like, hey, I remember, like, pizza here, Route 9 there, and the mall there. She was with Fox themselves, right? And then after that one, then we did, I think, the solo ones, right? The by ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after that, they had called us in as like a finalist.
Yes. And then they asked each of us a personal story on each of us. Like, does Anthony have an embarrassing story? So does it, yeah, and then does it, yeah, and they did that. So if you ever, they might ask you for that too. And I think the reason why they do that is they do that just to see how well you know each other. Number one,
of course,
but then also again to kind of gauge the personality too, which I think that's another thing that they look for as well. But yeah, and then so finally it probably was it feels like the whole interview audition portion of it went on for like 2 months to the 11th hour, if that's not.
I think you're right, because we ended up filming in December,
very beginning of December. Yeah,
and I think we had gotten like our first Zoom interview in like October.
Yes.
Does that ring a bell?
Beginning of October.
Yeah, but they stayed in touch with us the whole time, if you remember. I remember getting just a lot of information to let us know we were like still, like it was still happening, right? And even getting down to the final audition, which I didn't know. I mean, maybe they did this because of like the pandemic protocols or whatever, but like they had us in for a final audition, and then if they liked us, they're like, okay, then you're going to stay and film the show today.
Yes.
So it was interesting that they had actually called in like 20 pairs of people to come in, and only like 12 were staying or something, or 6 were staying. Right?
Yeah, it was 12 because
12
they had 6 episodes, so it's 2 people per episode, so they had double that number. And basically what it was, they brought us in and we did that. And what was just funny because I remember seeing that, because they did like a huge they did like a Zoom call with everyone who was like a finalist.
Yeah, you're right.
Before we even came on, and then they showed us how the game was working again. I was a little confused when they showed us. I was like, okay, I think I get it. And then eventually they had us, go through the game simulation again before we actually went on. But that was really interesting. But again, like they had so many people there because again, probably a COVID protocol thing as well. But then again, I think they wanted to give the show creator the right to be able to say, okay, I actually want these people to come on, versus being like, okay, this is because it's his show at the end of the day, right? Yeah. So we showed up. Okay, so again, like come December, within, I want to say 2 to 3 days prior, they had us do like a wardrobe setup, right?
They asked us to, yes, you're right, like to take pictures or show on video what we were going to have, right? So I think I remember like, hey, this is what I think I'm going to wear and all that. I'll video, I'll Zoom. You're right, and then it changed anyway on show day. If you remember, they had their own wardrobe person anyway. That kind of gave me a whole different outfit. Well. Yeah.
It's just like what's the point? But yeah, so that happened, and then we finally show up. We show up to the CB, and it was at the CBS studios. Again, there's Fox production, but then we show up to CBS studios.
You probably know. I think from time to time they just share studios, right? Yeah. We were. Yeah, you're right. It was CBS studios.
Right. We showed up. I remember I got to your place around like 10 o'clock. I want to say 10, maybe 11.
It was a long day for you.
It was a long day for me because I had to get on the road early. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it was a like a 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. You know, be on set by this time.
But I'm forgetting one. Not an insignificant detail, relatively small in comparison. Probably because it's not going to be like a part of any future protocols. But we did have to get COVID tested twice.
Oh, we did. Wait, was it twice?
Twice.
Okay. You're right.
It was like however many days before, and then a few days prior to that. Is like at the beginning of a weekend and at the end of the weekend, I think, or that Monday morning, I think is what it was.
Wait, are you sure it was twice?
Yeah.
I don't remember being okay.
I remember going twice. Twice.
Yeah, it needed to be done right before we showed up on set. And it was quick and easy.
Quick and easy.
Obviously, we were negative, so we're on the show.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. But so we showed up at noon, and then you want to explain what happened when we showed up?
Yeah, so we showed up, and I remember you had asked me the day before. You're like, "Hey, should I wear my Buddy the Elf?"
I forgot about that.
And I was like, I don't know if that's what you want to do. Like, I don't think it's necessary.
It probably would have been okay. It probably would have been okay to show up in that, to be perfectly honest, especially with it being the Christmas holiday,
Yes, yeah. But I mean, obviously it didn't matter.
No, yeah, it didn't make a difference for us, obviously. So,
and it maybe that was just me being self-conscious, which is dumb because I love the fact that you would do something like that. I should celebrate that more.
But that's the thing, though, is that they would have there would have been like, murmurs like, oh, well, one of the contestants show up as Buddy the Elf, and they're like, we definitely need to have that guy on the show.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, I remember. Yeah, we showed up, and you had came over. You left the car at my house because you lived, about a couple hours away. So yeah, we showed up, and then we get to our own little like hangout room. We had our own little private room. It was small, but there was actually games there. I think you brought a book. Maybe we brought a couple of games. Yeah, we brought a couple of games with us because we were just like, hey, we're gonna hang out. And we weren't allowed to use our phones. And so I remember me and you were kind of looking forward to it because this was like the first time that me and you were like, we actually get to hang out and there's like no family.
Totally uninterrupted.
There's no children. There's no phone. We can actually like play a game. And like, so that was kind of our intention. But I know that me and you were also nervous as well. We were also just like, okay, like we're actually here now. And, let's play a game. But on our head was like,
and there was still the
possibility, be like getting our mind sharp and getting our energy up, right?
Not just that, but we were also aware of the possibility that we could be going home too.
Yeah, that's right.
That was
that's right. Because we found out that it wasn't a done deal. I remember when they told us to show up, I thought it was, and then we found out it was like, no, if you're not there yet, there's still a live audition. Remember?
Yes.
So yes, I remember we got to the room and I think they gave us like lunch, and we waited a couple hours in that room before we actually did our live audition with the producer, which was in a separate room. Because I remember like we saw the producer like around 3-ish.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, good, you guys are good. Congratulations, you're gonna be on the show. And in my head, I'm thinking like, all right, we're gonna get going very, very soon. We didn't get going until about 8 p.m. Am I right?
I mean, I think that's when they're trying to get us quote unquote more show ready. I mean, we're in wardrobe, but then I don't think we actually got on stage until like 9, almost 10 o'clock at night. It just felt like
it was super late. It was, I mean, so we were in that room for a very long time. And so it was challenging because I remember I kept telling him like we have to keep our energy up. We can't feel fatigue. Because they can walk in at any moment and say, okay, you're on, right? And I'm just like, you gotta bring it. Like we have no idea when they're gonna come back. And again, I thought that they were gonna come shortly after they told us we were on it. So I was like, ready to go. And then a couple hours go by, you feel your energy going down. You're like, oh man, like I'm feeling fatigued now, but like they could be walking in, I have to bring it all. So I remember like amping myself up and staying amped like the whole time, which was very taxing because, I don't want to give any spoilers, but, at the very end when we were done and we had to do that like 30-minute like media post interview, I had crashed so hard. It was honestly one of the most difficult things I like ever did because I had just given it all at the show, during the taping, which was like an hour long. I kept that energy up for like 9 hours waiting to get on the show. And so when we were finally done with the show, I felt like, okay, I'm done. Like we're done. Like, awesome. We won. And now I could just like go to sleep. And they're like, oh, okay, we need you for like 30 minutes to post interview questions. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
So I felt it in my face that I just couldn't even smile anymore. Like I was just like, it was exhausting. But yeah, there was just a lot of like waiting around and not knowing when we were going to go on. Remember? And they had shared with us that, this was the first time they ever did the show. So the big slot machine they were using was having a lot of issues. And they're like fixing it as they go along because they had never really used it before. And so the first couple of shows they filmed went way longer because it kept crashing, if you remember. And it even crashed on us a couple of times, not for too long, but they had some issues where we had to kind of redo stuff. Right.
I remember that. Yeah. It was a couple quick moments. Fortunately, the issues that we ran into didn't last very long. But that was almost inconsequential compared to the way the everything shaped out. So yeah. So okay, so like hours went by right after
Well, I remember you had asked the producer to let your wife know that you were going to be longer. Remember? Because I think you were expecting to be home by like 5 a.m.
We both did. We're both responsible husbands, right?
Yeah. Like we were like, I remember being like, you were thinking like, I think I should be home by like 5. You know what I mean? Like, that time hit, we haven't even got on yet. So you had to let your wife and me too. We're like, hey, and then they ended up getting a text from a strange woman saying, hey, I'm the producer. This isn't anything strange. You know, they don't have their cell phones. However, just to let you know, they're still here and we haven't filmed yet. And I remember both of our wives were just like, what is going on here? Who's this strange woman that's texting us about her husband?
11 o'clock at night. your winter husbands, 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah, that was hilarious. So,
yeah, that was crazy. And then, but we actually had to simulate the show one final time for the show creator before we went on, if I remember correctly. And that was, and I think that's almost like really good advice in general, even like, for example, if you're interviewing for a job, for example. And I say that because you want to, when you display yourself, you want to put yourself on full display, really highlight your attributes, if you will. And so they had a couple of the trivia questions, and then when we got them right, you know, we like jumped up and down, right, for example. And like, it was funny because like the room was like a little bit, you know, the ceiling was a little bit shorter. So I remember jumping up really high and punching.
The panel, right?
Yeah. And then
and the producer loved that, right?
Yeah.
The producer during that interview was like, "This is great."
Yeah, but then also you did like the fake punches to me, but then you got my watch by accident, and then you cut your finger. Remember that?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And they loved it because you're like getting into it, right? And I was like, so it was pretty funny. But they love this, they love it. And because we showed so much energy, the interview, that audition portion, if you will, was incredibly short. It was like maybe like 5 minutes total.
We gave them enough. But also too, let me take a step back, because yes, we brought the energy, but more importantly, we brought our authenticity. Let's just be honest, right? Like producers, if you know, they can sense when someone is phoning it in, or they can sense when it's real emotion. And we had real emotion, right?
Yes.
I know that when we were doing that final interview, I remember telling you before that, I was like, this is it. Like, this is, you know, it's all up to now. Like, this is either we're, you know, we go in this interview and we kill it and we're in, or, you know, we go home. I'm like, we got to bring it all now. And I know that me and you were just excited to be there. It was fun to do something with you, which, you know, as much as I love you, it's very rare me and you just do something that's beyond a phone call. That's just me and you. You know, we've never had a guys trip together. We did in Vegas way back when. I doesn't count that. But like as adults, we've never really had like a fun guys trip where it's just me and you, or we can like just, you know, just talk, go on an adventure, play a game. And this was it. Yeah. And this is why this is so special for me and you to do. So I think that we were in that moment together, and we knew what it meant for us to have this time together, and also with the potential to win life-changing money, right?
Yes.
So that was all authentic. So, you know, the jumping up, the hitting the ceiling, that was real. You know, me doing the funny punching with you, like I do that with you all the time. You know what I mean?
It was 100% normal. It was like the thing is entertaining. I'm like, dude, you do this all the time. Stop.
So, you know, it was, and that's what sold it though, is it was just authentic. And that, at the end of the day, if you're going to be on the game show, that's what they really want, because then the audience connects with you, because they know you're just a normal person. And that's why I said to you when we first started, I always viewed these contestants on game shows as like these, like, who are they? Like, these are just like, how did they get there? They're mini celebrities. Like, I don't, how, you know, I couldn't even conceive of them being real people, but yet here we are, and we are real people. And again, they were authentic in their auditions to get on the show. They were just being themselves. And that's that's what's fun about these reality game shows, just regular game shows, is that these are just real people. And that's why they have such an attraction to it, because it's just like, hey, that's an everyday person. That everyday person has just won, you know, 100K. That everyday person just went on Price is Right and won, you know, a new car. Like, they're an everyday person. And that's what, at the end of it, that's what me and you are, right? We're just like normal people. And we put ourselves out there, and our authenticity is what got us into that cool game show and where we ended up.
You know, you bring this up a lot in this specific conversation about just putting yourself out there. And it just kind of reminds me of, well, really part of how this all came about was because I got a random email about a year prior to this to be in the audience for The Price is Right. It was the college rivalry episode. And I went. They were looking for, it was an email was sent specifically to West Point grads, because they were shooting for Naval Academy grads. They wanted to try to see if they could do something, get enough people for that, right? And so I remember going through that whole process. I went with a couple West Point. It was pretty small contingent. It was only about 4 of us who went, and there I want to say like 7 Naval Academy grads. But still, like, we went there, and again, like, looking back at that whole experience, because they actually audition people as they're going on to The Price is Right. And that's the thing, is they'll be like, oh, what school are you representing? And they're trying to spot in that specific little snapshot, because I think it's a show producer's there as you're waiting in line to see who's gonna like really bring the energy on the show. Because again, they don't want duds to be on the stage, because otherwise it makes for very boring television. And that really just didn't I don't remember being like all too crazy necessarily. I remember being pretty energetic when they did that, but it wasn't anything over the top. But I just remember talking to a friend about this, and I was like, "Hey, man," the other West Point girl, "Hey, you should come with us." Like, "Oh, that's so stupid. I don't be a cheerleader or whatever." He's just kind of negative about it. I was like, "Okay, well, whatever." Sure enough, my name was on a distribution list. I got actually no, like after that, I want to say about 4 months after that, I got an email notification or a text notification to audition for Mental Samurai. And it was the same
which you never told us about, by the way. That was you never told us that you're doing that, remember?
Yeah. It happened in February, like literally within like weeks of like the pandemic actually like coming in into place and really changing the world as we know it. And so I did that. And basically what happened was time had passed by, but sure enough, that was the same casting agency that sent me a text about Lucky Stars as being called at the time, rebranded to Cherries Wild, because Pepsi was like the main sponsor. That's why they called it Cherries Wild, to reintroduce Cherry Pepsi
Cherry Pepsi,
on the market. But again, like it just goes to show you that you put yourself out there, good things can really happen, and I sincerely believe that. And that's just I think that if you're looking to make a difference in your life, sometimes you just got to put yourself out there in the most positive aspect, in the most positive way, highlight your own positive attributes, and things will definitely go your way. So that was one of my big takeaways about this.
Yeah, and that's very well put, because it's the world should see who you truly are. Like, yes. everyone is a beautiful soul, right? I don't want not to get too far down off the path, but like everyone is awesome in their own way.
I agree.
Unfortunately, from time to time, either people just don't know that about themselves, and they have hang-ups. But at the end of the day, like everyone's got something to offer, man. Everyone's is, and so I've just learned, I find the best success. I find the best connections. I find I have the best time if I'm just being myself, and I don't really care if it looks dumb or what anyone else might say. Like I'm wearing my Macho Man shirt. And I don't know if you can see in the back, but I got like my wrestling collection there. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I happily share those things because that's just who I am, right? And so if everyone were just to be authentic, we would just see truly how awesome everyone really is, and how far and the potential that people can take with their lives. And so you just got to just keep moving forward with that kind of feeling, and don't have anything hold you back, because there's so much opportunity out there to succeed in so many different ways. And especially like down the entertainment path, right? You just like through your name, you were an audience, but then you became on a distribution list. And so they kind of contacted you for the first round of this show. And then look where we are now, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, if you never just decide to go on that one show and put yourself out there, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but not about Cherries Wild. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, seriously. Yeah, definitely. No, 100%. And it's, and I think people out there would really envy having an opportunity like this, envy in a good way, of course, that they like, man, I wish I could do something to put myself in that same situation, because it sounds like it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. It's also very draining. So, okay. So then
but it's awesome.
So we did the final audition, and then we finally, they called us out on stage. What was that like?
That was, so I remember walking out there, and I was definitely overwhelmed, because first there was no audience, although when you see it on TV, they would have you believe there was an audience.
Yes.
There wasn't any audience. But it was more like
that, by the way. Yeah.
But I remember walking out and just seeing the size of the slot machine, which was like 3 stories high.
Yeah.
And it was that, so that was really impressive in itself. But the fact that like holy shit, like we're here now, like we're about to play this game, and it's going to be for real money, right?
Yes.
Like it was basically
on national television.
The journey had ended. It did. Yeah. Like everything we had done, all the telling our story, being our authentic self with all these producers, and just showing everyone like, hey, yes, root for us. Like root for us. We will, we are likable people that put on your show, and your fans hopefully will have a good time watching us. Like it ended there, because here we are walking onto that set. And I remember it being like really quiet, right? It was super quiet because there wasn't, again, there was no fans, but all the producers and everyone's talking. And I remember it being like hearing my footsteps, like walking on like the floor, right? I can hear that very clearly. And I just remember being like we did it. Like we're here now. Like now we have to play the game. Now we have to actually do well, right? And I always had confidence in my ability to know trivia. Like I would always, play Jeopardy by watching it, on TV from time to time, and I would get like half of them right. I'm like, man, I would just like totally kill the game. But here we are, like, and it was actually happening. And I'm like, okay, like we're doing this. And I remember just that feeling of like, okay, that the journey's ended, but now it's time to actually play. And that was very overwhelming for the first few minutes.
Yes.
And I got to the point like when I get like nervous, my jaw will actually start to like I don't know what you call it. It would like
twitch.
Do its own thing, right? I'll do like that. My teeth will chatter. That's what it is. My teeth will chatter.
Really?
And it started to do that. Yeah, because my body is having this reaction of just like nerves, and that's where I feel it the most. I'll feel it in my jaw, and I'll start my teeth will start chattering. I remember that kind of happening, and I had to just like ignore it, because if I ignore it, it'll go away. But oh my gosh, like we're here, So as much as I love putting myself out there and being, myself, like I still get nervous, I still have nerves, and it's definitely hit when we were there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was nervous too. Yeah. That was crazy because it was so huge. It was, like you said, no audience. That was it's so funny. Just seeing them funny in that they put them in like in post-production. Yeah. Right.
And they told us too, remember, they're like, hey, that's where they are. So like look there, right? Because that's where it's gonna be after the show. We're like, all right, like whatever.
Sure thing. Whatever you say.
Yeah.
And then they brought us on stage initially just so to kind of orient us let us see where it was. And then they ushered us off to the side and then kind of explained things like the procedures.
Well,
right.
They started. Yeah, well, they sat us down and then they started to do like some touch-ups of makeup real quick, just like whatever. And if you remember, that's when Jason Biggs came over. Remember?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he was chit-chatting with us a little bit. And he was awesome, man. I remember me and you telling, like, Jason Biggs, the reason why he's awesome is, again, he's just a regular guy.
Yes.
And he himself, unless he's, like, pulling off some great act, he's an authentic guy, too. And he was just being himself. And I think me and you connected with that right away, to the point where I'm like, this is the kind of guy I would be friends with in my regular life. This is the kind of guy I would hang out with, and we would just joke around. He would just fit right in our circle. Like, and that's cool. Like, as I've gotten older, like, that's all I really care about is people I can just hang out with and just be myself and not have to worry about anyone thinking,
I remember like being on stage with him. He was very friendly, very personable. He wasn't like, I don't know. He very easily could have been a douche in between takes. Then again, that probably would have taken away from the positive vibe from the game, the whole experience, and that probably would have affected our playing experience as well, which is probably the reason why he was there to begin with. But yeah, he was a good game show host, I think. I think it was, and I was pleasantly surprised when he told me he used to go to Army football games as a kid growing up. Yeah.
Well, remember he used to go to like all those smaller college football games or basketball games, if you remember. Like he said, like everything like in North Jersey. Like I said, like I think he was like a real guy. I think he was just himself. He was just a really nice guy, and we actually had a real connection with him based on some of his experience he had, being around North Jersey. Right?
Yes, exactly. And then so we did the game, right? And that part seemed to have a pretty decent flow to it. They broke it up. We would take some breaks in between segments. What do you remember for like the first like set of games that we played? Because it was basically it was 3 games. Two rounds, and then the slot portion at the very end. So yeah.
So the first one was like true or false, right?
Fact or fiction. Fact or fiction.
Yes. And I remember we got like the first 2 right.
Yes.
And then we only got 3 out of 5 right.
Yes.
You remember which 2 we got wrong?
We got Taylor Swift had the most liked. Taylor Swift had the most liked photo on Instagram, and it actually wasn't. It was the photo of the egg. Is like the most liked photo on Instagram. Yeah. I remember kicking myself because I remember, like, as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, I remember that. I remember that happening. It was so stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was definitely like, I was annoyed by that. And then what was the other one? I can't remember the other one, but the ones I remember we got right was Basset
well,
Hounds.
hang on. So the one
yeah.
that we hang on. So the one that we forgot was Samuel Jackson was in every Quentin Tarantino movie.
Yes.
And I actually jumped the gun. I jumped the gun on that. And you like let me answer. And they told us flat out, like, look, there's no time limit. You don't need to rush your answer. And this is something I've worked on my entire life, is that sometimes I will definitely, shoot first, ask questions later. And I definitely jumped at that time. I'm like, yeah, true. And then I was like, oh my gosh. And afterwards it's like, no, he was not in Inglourious Basterds. He was not in Reservoir Dogs. There was another thing he wasn't in. I was like, oh my gosh, like Inglourious Basterds, like one of my favorite movies. I can't believe I even missed that one, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a little disappointed that we only got 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
I was.
The egg one was a little more, even though I knew that one, that was still pretty obscure enough that easily could have. We should have forgotten, or never should have got the Samuel L. Jackson question wrong. That was one that we should not have gotten wrong. Yep. Okay, so we got 3 out of 5 right on that one.
Yeah.
And then let's see here. Oh, but then there was the what was this the wild moment? The wild moment, was that in the first round or the second round of the questions?
I think that was in round 2, I think.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. So because do you want to explain what the wild moment was?
Oh man. I think it was during one of the questions in round 2. Well, before we get to round 2, do you remember what our topic was for round 2 and how that came about?
Yes, I do remember that, but I think you should explain.
Okay, so in round, they said, okay, we're going to give you a choice of 2 topics for round 2. Yeah. And whichever one you pick is what we'll do.
The name of the game was One Big Question. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. Because the one big question is really 5 questions about one topic, right? And to be honest, up to that point, I still didn't really understand what that meant. But they took us to the side and they said, okay, here's your 2 choices. Which one do you want? And they showed one was like boy bands, and then one was Star Wars.
Yeah.
And me and you were like, Star Wars, right? Like, of course,
Yeah.
And I remember you turned to me right away. You're like, dude, do you think they rigged that? Like, do you think they gave us that on purpose? And I'm like, I don't think so, because there's like a whole standards and practices. Like, it's like a third party that has to come in to confirm that there's no like quiz show thing happening.
I'm almost forgetting about something. You just reminded me, because we actually had to get briefed by a lawyer before we got on the show. Like, it was one of the last like audition videos or audition interviews. Do you remember that? I think it was with it was with all the finalists together.
Okay.
And so what he did was the lawyer explained, hey, by the way, this is what happens because and they explained the reason why we do this in the first place. Yeah, quiz show. Yeah, they explained that whole thing. So yeah.
Real quick, do you want to explain what we mean by quiz show and why it affects game shows today?
Yes. So quiz show, basically what that means is it's a reference to the fact that with quiz show, there was a trivia show back in I don't know when.
The 50s or 60s, I think.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah, maybe 50s, where someone had people were tuning into this quiz show, and this guy was getting all these answers right. But what they didn't realize is that the show was completely rigged, and the FBI got involved, and it was a huge scam. And basically there became some like legislation, if you will, because of that.
Yeah.
As a result of the whole incident, and now because of that, things are much tighter, and that's why you can't rig trivia shows anymore like that. Number 1. Number 2, it needs to be totally random. Like, they have to, like, a third party needs to come in and be the ones that pull random questions, or make sure that it's random. Yes, that, and then also that's also part of the reason why once we were done filming, we couldn't tell anyone about anything at all. That's right. That was another part of it. Anyways, yeah. So we got Star Wars. Yeah, that little legal segue, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I just remember. I'll never forget. You turned right to me and just like I can't believe, like, do you think they gave that to us? Like, I was like, no, man. But like, I just remember we were like, you couldn't have picked a better topic that me and you would both know the same amount about, and we both know a lot about it, right?
Yes.
I understand there's more Star Wars fans that probably know every single dialogue to every single movie ever, but I would say me and you are definitely like way above average in terms of what we know about Star Wars. Up to that point. So
And you know, like I have to point this out too, because I know, like, I wanted to say this earlier in our conversation, but one of the ways that in which we bonded when we first met the very first time in New Jersey back in 1998, it was by talking about our love for Star Wars.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That was one of the things that you and I had connected over, and I think this is just a great way to, like, our little story arc, if you will.
That's true. To bring it all back.
Yeah, it just brings it all back to this moment. We're like, oh my gosh, let's go win this.
And I mean, totally. I mean, again, spoiler, but we got all 5 of those questions right, because there were 5 questions. But getting back to what you said about the wild moment. It's like a bone. It appears as one of the questions on the board, and then you pull the lever 5 times, and during that, like 5 different prizes show up that are just free, right? So whether it's another cherry or just some extra money, right?
Or a free spin,
or a free spin. That's what happens, and it doesn't take the place of one of the questions. It just pops up in between one of the 5 questions.
Yeah,
and that's that wild moment, and you're supposed to get all excited because it's like this pump you wild moment, and you're bringing more energy than you can.
Yes, and basically, and just for those of you who are kind of lost on what I guess maybe I can explain this when I'll just explain it now, because I'm just already opened that door. But basically, in the game, because what happens is, along the way, you're accumulating cash, and trying to uncover more wild cherries, right, as well as trying to get any additional free spins. Because what happens is, once you get to the final stage, which is actually pulling the slot machine, if you could, I guess, find as many as 2 additional wild cherries. They already automatically give you 2 wild cherries to begin with.
They give you 1, so they give you 1, and then you can get more cherries along the way.
Okay.
Right? And the whole point is at the very end of the game, if you have 5 wild cherries in the 5 slots, then you now win the grand prize,
which is $250,000. Yeah.
So you're trying to accumulate the cherries along the way, because for every cherry that you get is 1 less cherry you have to find when you do your final spins, and you're accumulating spins also along the way, right? So when we got to the final round, we already had 2 cherries, which means we only had to get 3 more, and I think we had like 7 spins, right? But we also had a bunch of cash that we accumulated along the way, and
I think it turned into like 7 total spins. Like three free spins, as well as the cash that we had.
Because it was like 10K. You could
you
could use your prize money to buy another spin. It was like 10K per spin. Yes, I think you're right. So I think we had like 40K at the end of round 2, and like 3 spins, and we already had 2 cherries, which we needed 3 more to win the grand prize.
Yep.
But here was the kicker, though. If you remember, when we were reading, the fine print, if you will, it said flat out, like, it's random, and not every game will even have a chance to have the grand prize. Remember?
Yes.
Which means basically, like, you're not gonna. There's really, out of the 6 games that are played, not all 6 will have a chance to even get to 5. It's configured that way. They're only going to give it to like maybe 2 out of the 6, right? So I remember telling you that. I was like, remember, hey, like there's a chance that we may not even, it's not even physically possible, because it's not even programmed that way. We have to, kind of make our best decisions along the way. But we were still hopeful, right? We were still extremely hopeful, and we were definitely going to try to get as much cash that we could.
We were still, and I remember like along the way, I remember, like, for example, like we were talking about this after we got our second COVID test, like what are we gonna try to walk away with at a minimum, right?
Yeah. That's right.
We set that goal. We're like, okay, so how much should we walk away with? So that way we showed up. We had a plan. We said, okay, we're gonna try to do XYZ when we show up. And eventually, we were on stage, and then we said, they said, hey, what number are you trying to shoot for? Jason actually asked that. It didn't make it into the final cuts, because we were getting there, because we were going down through our spins, and then we were accumulating cash. And again, like, so what happened is you'd spend money, and you pull the free spin, and obviously everyone wants to use every single free spin they have, because they want to try to get as close as they possibly can to the $250,000. And so we used all 3 free spins. Sometimes, one time I think we were like paused on cash, but then red X's would show up sometimes, and then you basically start back from 0, or at least it was just basically, I guess the best way to summarize this is we had our $42,000, and then there's the money that we would earn on top of that on the spin. And so basically, so
well, let me hop in there, because if you remember, it's as we're spinning, like if you won money, he would say, okay, there's 50 grand that you just spun.
Yeah.
And we're going to add that 50K to your 40K, which is 90K. You can take that now and stop. That was it. It was basically saying you could take the money and stop. Or you can reject the 50K that you just won and spin again. Remember, right? And of course, it's like, well, yeah, free spins, use the free spins. And I remember telling you, getting back to what the amount we talked about that we wanted, I remember telling you, I'm like, look, it's 250K, but divided by 2, which is 125 each.
Yes.
We're in California, so let's just assume it's 50K and that's getting taxed.
Yeah.
So I told you, I'm like, look, if we win the grand prize, we're only walking away with 62.5. I say that not to sound like that's chump change, because it's not, right?
Yeah.
But it's also not $62,000. Also, is not $250,000, because they would have you believe that you won $250,000, but really what you're walking home with is a quarter of that, based on your 2 people and the taxes. So I remember telling you, I'm like, look, Andy, it just really makes sense that we go for that $250,000. Like we need to do everything we can, and like we just need to take every chance we have to get that. If you remember, because otherwise it's like, it's not much, it's not a super high amount. We might as well try to get it while we can.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But of course, as we were going through our spins, that kind of changed a little bit, if you remember, as we got to our last spin. So.
Oh yeah. Cause it got down to, cause we used all of our free spins. We were down to, I believe it was $22,000. We used 10,000 of those dollars for that one final spin, and then 90,000 popped up on top of that. So which landed us at 102,000.
Which was
which was incredible. And then
we decided to take a walk. Well, because here's why. Here's why it made sense, right? And I mean to cut you off, but here's why it made sense, because we still were 2 cherries shy.
Yes.
Right. We still were 2 cherries shy. And if we did not take that and used our last 12, which is 10K, or last 10K to get one more spin, we still would not have gotten the grand prize, because you needed 5 cherries to win the 250K.
Yes.
So it was more like, okay, well, if we don't take this 90K that's on the board and we do one last spin, what are the chances that our very last spin will be an amount higher than the 90K?
Yes.
That's what it was. And I don't remember seeing an amount higher than 90K come up at all yet. So we're just like, I think we're okay with this, because, we're not going to get the 250K, and this might be the highest amount that's even there. So we ended up taking that. So we had the 90K that showed up, our 12K that we had still from our earlier rounds, which is the 102K that we walked away with.
Yes.
And so I remember that's what I'm saying. Our strategy kind of changed when I was originally saying, well, we should just go for it. But we couldn't, though. We weren't, there was no possible way we could have possibly gotten the grand prize by the time we got to our last spin.
For sure.
But it was nerve-wracking, if you remember, brother, because at one point I think we were up to like 90 on the board, and we decided not to take it, right? And then the amount went away from more spins, and then we got all the way down to 12K going into our last spin, and then it was like, did we just blow it? Like, are our wives gonna kill us, because we could have walked with 90K, combined, together. Or we could be walking home with like 12K until the very, very last spin, which was very dramatic and actually made for really good TV.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And then they actually showed us what would have happened if we would have, not taken the cash and done one more spin. And I think it was
like 40 or something.
No, I think it was less than that. I think it was like,
was it less?
I think it was like 20K.
Okay. Yeah. So he basically did it one more time. So Jason spun it so he could say, well, if you decided to roll, this is what would you have gotten. So, but yeah, that was very dramatic. And again, it was very draining, because it really was an emotional roller coaster, right? It was very, like, I felt very nerve-wracked after round 1. We had missed a couple answers. And they were, I feel like anyone could have gotten them. Really, it wasn't very hard. It was like who played Princess Leia, like Carrie Fisher. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or who played, who played
Finn.
Finn. You're like, oh yeah, that was John Boyega. Like, it's just, it wasn't super hard. It really wasn't super hard at all.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of high hopes going into the last round. I was like, we got 3 spins, we got 42K. Basically in my head, we have 7 spins to get 3 cherries. Like, we're gonna do this. And then we had the X's like a couple times, right? It was like 2 times that we got the X. And when the X hits, basically, that you get nothing,
Yes.
So
Yes, it was. Oh my goodness, it was just so crazy. But it
I'm bringing
was.
the whole thing back. I'm like feeling it in my body again, you know.
I
Like...
know. I'm hearing the brr, brr, with the X's in the back of my. Yeah, it's just crazy. But that was one hell of a moment though, dude. I mean, just it was such a relief because I remember again we were done. Finally, we were done filming, and then we went back to the little like hangout room. And then, what do you remember from that moment? Or actually, no, we did go there. We did the. Yeah, go ahead.
We did the media room. Yeah, we did the media room,
Yes.
and I remember my face was hurting because I was smiling all day long, and like I was feeling it like here and here. And I'm a big smiler. I like to smile a lot. I like to laugh, and when I do it for a long time, it hurts. My face is like literally tired. That day, like afterwards, I was just like it had just hurt to just like smile anymore. And that's what I was trying to tell you earlier when we did that media thing for like it felt like 30 minutes. It was definitely more than 15.
Yes.
You know, just again, like tell us your story, tell us what I felt like. You know,
Oh my goodness.
oh, like not now.
All over
Like
again.
I just gave everything out there.
Yeah.
You know, and I just want to sit down. Our dinner was waiting for us in the room. We had ordered dinner like 3 hours ago, like right before we had went down to go film. They took our dinner order. I was like, I'm starving, I'm thirsty.
Oh
like,
yeah.
I just want to like we made it. We like not only got on the show, but we actually walked away, you know, with 51K each, you know, because we had 102K that we won as a team. And I was like, I just wanted to go home and tell my wife. And it was already at this point, like 11:30, right? And then asking us to like talk again about the same stuff. It was, and so that was difficult. I never actually watched that interview segment that they said they were putting on Instagram. I like never watched it. So I have like no idea.
I have no idea either.
I felt like crap. I felt like I'm not coming across friendly right now at all, you know?
Yeah. It was like you said, the energy had already been spent in front of the slot machine with all the bright lights too, all the flashing lights. And it was, that set was also interactive. It was incredibly interactive, not just a slot machine, but just the way the lights were set up too.
Yeah. Cause all the intelligent lighting was flashing at you, right? Like it was like all the lights were hitting you and you know,
going up and down. Yeah.
It was a very much a sensory experience. It really was. It was very, very like, you know, sensory overload in a lot of ways, which is fine. Again, it's a game show. They want that. But yeah, I remember. But finally, after that, I think we walked up to our room. Our food was there. We had ordered like, or they had gotten us like Maggiano's. So there was like some pasta for me and some chicken for you. We're just like, I remember just being like really hungry and like I knew it was super late at night. And you're not supposed to eat that late, but I was like, man, I had to eat in like 7 hours, and I just like spent my whole body like just give me some food. And I remember just sitting there. Me and you were kind of like in this like weird like. Did we just win 102K?
Like what just happened? Yeah. What just happened?
Yeah, like exactly. Like I can't believe we did that. Like that was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and I just remember being like, hell, I can't wait to go home. And I remember telling you, like, you still had like an hour and a half car ride after getting back to my house. Remember? And I was like, you sure you don't want to like crash at my house? Like you need to work tomorrow? And
I was still jacked. To a degree. I was drained, but I was ready to go home to tell Kate is what it was. I was Mrs. the Game Maker, if you will. Yeah. So just ready to get back home and tell her about it. And that was great. I just it's just funny filling out the tax forms too. I'm not sure if you remember that, where they had out and then we had to sign at the bottom. Yeah. But then we got in the went back to your place, parted ways for the night, and then I went back home. And it was just like it's so funny because the wife can be very, very she loves time management. She loves she doesn't love she's very much and she's a bit of a light sleeper. But if there's anything to be woken up to randomly in the middle of the night, it was just, hey, by the way, Anthony, I just won money on a show. Yeah. And telling her the amount, it was just like she was it was funny because I told her, because I was like it was a huge amount. It was like $102,000, and the next morning it just like it almost didn't seem to translate because she was like half asleep basically when I told her. But I think I eventually hit her, and it was really cool. And then I think the worst part about this whole experience was actually just not being able to tell anyone anything. And not that I have like the biggest mouth in the world necessarily, but you and I are both very social, very much extroverts.
Yeah, well, we like to share, right? We want to share what's good in our life, not to brag, but just say, hey, I had an incredible experience, and I want you to know because you're important to me, right? And we do that. We share with people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was, and just being able to sit there for 3 months, because the other part of it is that is that whole gag rule where you can't tell anyone, because if you tell anyone too, there's a possibility the episode won't air. And even after filming, though, there's still the possibility that the episode might not even air. Which they mentioned. And to me, I was like, man, that was crazy. It was pretty wild. And so,
well, remember too, if the episode doesn't air, you don't get the prize money. And remember, I saw that in the contract also, and that's why I remember telling you before the audition, like, even if we get on the show, you need to still bring it, because if they think that we're done while we're filming, they may not air it.
Yes,
which would cost us some money, right? But I wasn't concerned about that. I felt like as once we got going, I felt like this is going to be fine. Like they're gonna keep us.
Yes,
you know. But yeah, the gag rule was kind of a bummer, because we were allowed to tell our wives, but like we couldn't tell our parents. You know, we couldn't really tell anybody else. You know, until it aired. But that was fun too, because when it did air in February, I think it was like February.
March. It was March. It was very beginning of March. Okay. Oh, that was the other thing. I remember they had to move the dates, like the airing dates.
Yes, that's right.
And that was like, that was frustrating, because it was like NASCAR was on the same night, but then they had like a weather delay because of NASCAR, and then so they had to bump it by like a week, and it was just sort of like,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. We got together to watch it when we thought it was going to air. You're right, and NASCAR ran over because NASCAR had a rain delay.
Yes. And
for like 3 or 4 hours, so they totally bumped our episode.
Yes,
that's right. And then we had to wait like another week. I remember that. You're right. We're watching, like, where is this thing? We went to our parents' house. We're all sitting there ready to watch it, and it didn't come up. Yes. And then, like our mom is telling our dad, like, "You on the right channel?" He's like, "I'm on the right channel." Like, what's going on?
Fight about it.
I totally forgot about that, man. Yeah.
Oh, it was just so crazy, just because because it was just like, we just want to watch it already. We want to make sure it actually makes it on the air. But I felt way more assurance, because when I saw like the name of our episode on there, it was Andy and Anthony was on there. It was not only just in the TV listing, but then they also had it, like, it was on Hulu. It was scheduled on Hulu, right? Which is crazy. And that was one hell of a moment. I mean, I guess, like, looking back on that, like what's your biggest takeaway from that whole experience? I mean, how do you look back upon that?
Again, I look back at it as I got to do something, first of all, with you, which is rare. But secondly, like, what an experience, right? To be on a game show with my brother. That was awesome. You know, like we joke around about, hey, maybe we should do Amazing Race one day, right? Because those are just like these really fun experiences, like once in a lifetime, right? For the most part, these things are, who knows if we'll get on a game show ever again.
Yes.
It's just, it's even relative to even make it. And here we did it together. So it was really more of just doing it with you and getting that, and even if we had won nothing, it still would have been great, because we got to roll through that thing together. Really, the money was obviously like appreciated, and it was awesome. And, it did help us both financially, of course. But just like rolling through that whole process with you and just being on the show was really the takeaway, which is awesome. I got to share that with you. Who, as you know, I'm not ever shy to say this, who I love dearly, because you're my best friend.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I got to share it with my best friend. It was amazing.
Yeah, no, I love you too. It's great, man. It was, I really appreciated that moment. It was such a fun experience going through that with you. And again, so if anyone, if it's like, watching this, listening to this, you're ever thinking about, hey, man, I'd love to get, I'd love to get on a game show. How do I do that? Again, I think that one of the simplest ways you could do is just look for a casting agency online, because the casting agencies, they show, hey, we're working with these specific game shows. And you can literally just go on their website, and then they have auditions, and you can literally audition for a show. I mean, fortunately for me, the audition came to me by text, and that's so it was a little bit easier in that regard. But if you ever, it
came to you via text because you had reached out to go on, to go on Price is Right.
Yes.
If you remember,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So I mean, also too, that it would also, the other way to do it is, hey, find the show that you want to be on and see how you can get on. And even though you may not make that audition, the producers will keep you in mind for something else.
Yes.
Because again, this was a brand new game show, right? This was brand new, so it wasn't like they knew what they were really doing, but they had kind of knew who you were, had you on a list as probably as someone to at least reach out to, because you had shown interest on another show, and you had, gotten, some level of exposure within the production community. But that's it. Like, you just never know, man. Like, you may not get this audition, but they're going to remember you for the other one.
Yes.
Yeah. And then
exactly.
just keep on trying. Why not? I mean, we made our audition on your phone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was
yes.
easy
Nothing
enough,
special.
we just had recorded video on our phone, and that's it. We did it.
And I did it on my phone too.
Yeah. We did it at my house. You came over. You brought your kids. Our kids were playing in the background. We each have 2 kids. We used one of our kids at the very end, if you remember.
Yeah,
we held up. We're like, oh, by the way, our kids are really cute. Like, so it wasn't like we had this formal production thing either. It was just, hey, it was phone, video, edit, and we sent it in. So it was
casual and authentic, is what it was. Yeah. So
I would. That's the advice I would say. Just again, be authentic, and we all have the technology to do it. It's super simple.
Definitely, for sure. Awesome. Well, I love revisiting that moment, Anthony. It's definitely one of my favorite highlights. Having been on this earth, especially with you. What I want to do now actually is I want to transition to a really fun moment of my program, and that is you and I are going to do the fun segment, as I like to say, and this is tailored specifically to you and your interests. So what I have here for you today is I'm about to share my screen, and I have curated a whole bunch of photos of wrestling moves, and you and I are going to go through them. There's 20 of them, by the way.
I know them all.
We're gonna see how well. Okay. If you know all the wrestling moves. Okay. All right. So
just again for your audience, that's an easy one. For your audience, I've been a wrestling fan since 1985, which is, by the way, when this was taken. And I know that because Hulk Hogan's wearing his white trunks, and he stopped wearing those right around at the end of '85. I've remained a wrestling fan my entire life, and I literally just went to go see an all elite wrestling event over at the HEB Center like last month. So
I need to go with you sometime. In all seriousness, I need to go with you sometime.
It's awesome. It's like a big party, man, because the only people that are there are wrestling fans. So it's not like there's a dud in the crowd. Like everyone is pumped to be there, and it's like a big party, man.
For sure.
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay.
So you want me to tell you what that is?
What is this?
That's a leg drop.
Yes, it is. Sure. Well done. I love it.
That's Nikolai Volkov, who's on the ground, who was portrayed as a Soviet, as a Russian, who in real life is actually Serbian. So, but I will tell you this: there was a little stint where after the Soviet Union crumbled, where he was claiming that he was from Lithuania. That was for a very short while.
Interesting. That's so funny. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So you got this one. Okay. Next one. Ready?
Yep.
One for one.
Moonsault.
Oh my goodness.
That's Lita and that's Edge. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. This is gonna fly by quickly. Then I have a feeling.
I told you. I know them all, man. I know them all.
You might be the first person to get all the trivia questions right. I okay.
Shocker. The People's Elbow. So that's Dwayne the Rock Johnson after he was Flex Cabana, and that's the badass Billy Gunn, also known as Mr. Ass. So that's what's going on there. People's Elbow.
And yep, that's the People's Elbow. Good job. Oh my goodness, this is if
you should not be surprised.
No, I guess I'm not. I guess I don't know. I mean, you never know sometimes. Okay. Yeah. All right.
That is the Iron Sheik. I'm sorry. That is the Camel Clutch. So on your left, the Iron Sheik is given the Camel Clutch. I cannot see whose face that is. On the right, that's Jinder Mahal, also doing the Camel Clutch. That's more recent on the right.
This does have. Do you happen to know what? So Camel Clutch is correct, but do you happen to know what the other?
The other what?
It's also known as a different move as well.
Okay. The Steiner recliner.
No.
And now, are you saying the guy on the right? When the guy on the right does it, it's called something else.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But this is just what I found online. That's all.
Camel Clutch.
No. Yeah. So Camel Clutch is right. That's what that is still correct. But it's the Accolade.
Oh, okay, fine. I guess the thing is the guy on the right, Jinder Mahal. So it's like not, so what? Okay, so here's what happens, right? So the Camel Clutch has been around for a while, and what happens is when a new wrestler in the modern time kind of picks it up, they'll just kind of rename it. Yeah. But it is always going to be the Camel Clutch if you ask any true wrestling fan.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if it came before, we can call it the Accolade. So,
yeah. Hey, here's a trivia for you. Did you know that the Iron Sheik used to be a bodyguard for the Shah before the Cultural Revolution in Iran?
I had no idea.
And he actually fled. He fled because the country was becoming, radical. He actually fled to America. Yep.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, you can't get more American than that, honestly. Like that's typically that's like. Yeah.
Well, that's the irony is that It actually loves America. He actually coached American wrestlers for the Olympics in wrestling.
Really?
And even though he portrayed an American hating villain per se, he actually like truly loves America. And here's the other fun part: I just finished listening to a podcast about him. So
that's so funny.
Khosrow Vaziri is his real name.
Oh my goodness.
So.
Okay, I need to do a better job with the trivia questions here. Okay. All right. How about this one?
That is the ankle lock. That's Kurt Angle, and he's doing that to Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler of all time.
Yes. Yep. Ankle lock is correct.
Yep.
Okay.
That's probably, I think that's at WrestleMania. I think that's at WrestleMania 21.
Okay.
With the first time they wrestled.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, here we go. All right, you're 5 for 5. Okay, so here we go. That
is a belly to back suplex. That's Brock Lesnar giving it to John Cena. Who, by the way, we've been watching Peacemaker. It's okay. It's got funny moments. It's funny. It's funny seeing him being really raunchy, because the reason why he was so popular for so long in WWE is that his merchandise was the bestseller, and his people that bought his merchandise were young kids. So seeing him kind of flip this to adult role is kind of humorous. But that's ability to back suplex.
Okay, so it says the German suplex.
You're right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
That's honestly, it's the same thing.
Okay. Okay.
Belly to back. You see.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I'll give it to you. That's fine. Okay.
Okay.
I'll get that one as the wrong one.
I'll be honest. I think you know more than I do at this point. So I'm just, I just casually did a search on the internet. Just like, okay, what wrestling? So
that's cool.
Yeah. I'm sure you could go through a whole podcast episode where you could explain why it's actually the belly to back suplex versus the German suplex.
Because when they start off, he's actually holding him, and Brock Lesnar's belly is to John Cena's back, and then he throws him backwards.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Next one.
Hurricane Rana.
Okay.
Hurricane Rana is how it's pronounced. And that is, I don't even know who that is. I can't make out who that is. That must be one of a guy I can't recognize. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, Hurricane Rana.
That's one of them. Do you happen to know the other name for this?
Frankensteiner?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Frankensteiner. So Scott Steiner used to do this move. Scott Steiner is also known as Big Papa Pump. Scott Steiner, so instead of doing it from the top rope, Scott Steiner would literally, this is how long his strong his legs are. He would literally, from a standing position, jump up and wrap his legs around your head and flip you over, like just from standing on the ground. That's his vertical. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Okay. Next one.
Vertical suplex. That's Bobby Lashley. And who's he giving?
Yes, that's correct.
Vertical suplex. Yeah.
Vertical suplex is correct. Yeah. My goodness. I'm embarrassed at how easy this is for you. For me.
This is the Kinshasa.
For me, not you. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is the Kinshasa. So that's Shinsuke Nakamura and that's Samoa Joe. And yeah, it's basically a knee to the head. And as you can see, and to all the detractors that say wrestling is fake, yes, they know who's going to win. But like his knee is on his face. Okay. So
yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Even faking that, it would still hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So good job. Oh my goodness.
Ooh. So this goes by many names. I know what this is. Goes by many. Oh, and I just saw it the other day, and it was called something else. Oh my gosh. I know the answer, and it's not happening. Just give me a few more seconds. This is oh my gosh. For the sake of time, I'm going to say I'll take the loss. And when you show me the name, of course, I'm going to know what it is.
Do you just want to just throw out a guess?
No, because I know the answer, and my guess I know will be wrong. So hang on. No, let's go on. I'll take the loss. This is just a brain fart.
Canadian Destroyer.
Yes. Yep. And so it's kind of hard to capture it in a single frame because they're actually both flipping together at the same exact time. And what's happening is the guy with the black pants is actually going to be going clockwise, and he's going to be landing on his head. And so when this move started, the guy wearing the green shorts is actually standing upright. And so they're both going to flip at the same time. And the guy with the black pants is supposed to land on his head. Canadian Destroyer. Like they do that move through tables now, which is crazy, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's a good photo though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the punt. That's Randy Orton punting Christian in the head.
Yep. Correct. The punt kick.
Punt kick.
Yep. I'll give it to you. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's not really a move per se. It's just kind of like I'm kicking you in the face. This is the Walls of Jericho. So this is Chris Jericho. This is one of my favorite of all time. And if you ever get a chance, Andy, you should listen to his podcast.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't just talk about wrestling. He talks about a lot of different stuff all over the board, which is
interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, he has a great podcast called Talk is Jericho, by the way. That's the Walls of Jericho.
Okay. It says Boston Crab / Lion Tamer.
No, that's the Walls of Jericho.
Okay.
That's the Walls of Jericho. I challenge that.
Okay.
Walls of Jericho.
I'll take note of that, and we'll
look it up.
We'll circle back on this one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, wait, go back a second. Now, the reason why they may be calling it that, because, well, that's not even the Boston Crab either. The reason they're calling it the Lion Tamer maybe for here is because he went by Lionheart. It was Chris Jericho Lionheart. And maybe at that time, that's what he called the move. But when he came to WWE, that was called the Walls of Jericho. So okay. I'm taking that one. That's a win for me.
Okay. Like I said, like I just kind of something on the internet, dude. Like I'm not. Like you're the true aficionado, at a minimum, if not expert. So, okay, next one.
Okay. Oh, this is interesting. So that's Brian Kendrick that's given the move, and it looks like he's flipping him over his head. Oh, you know what? I think I'm stumped on this one. So like when. Yeah, you know what? I'm stumped on this one. I've seen this move, and honestly, I don't recall the name.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take a loss on this.
Okay, so it's the Burning Hammer.
Burning Hammer. You know what? I've not called it that. I've not heard it being called that before.
Okay.
That's interesting. I don't know where they got that from, but you know what? I'll take a loss because I don't have an argument against it. So, but I see that move a lot. And what's going to happen is basically this guy is starting on his back facing the lights, and he's just flipping him over. So the guy that's in the air is going to land on his stomach. Is what's going to happen.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. All right, here we go. I think this is the best photo I've ever seen for wrestling.
Shooting Star Press.
Yes.
Yep, Shooting Star Press, and that is Matt Seidel that's doing the move. At the time, it was called Evan Bourne. That's a very, very athletic move to do. It's like this inverted flip. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's such an incredible photo. It's like, man, it feels like this is probably like hyperbole for wrestling right here. Stuff moves like this. It's just like what fans really love.
Well, here's the thing, right? Because here's where he's going to land is actually, if you can imagine, he's going to be flipping towards you still, and then do another one, and he's going to land basically with his stomach on his stomach. But he's actually going to be flipping another 360 in the air from this point before he hits his opponent on the ground. Which is why it's amazing. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Oh, so this is, okay, hang on. These are Japanese guys. Ripcord clothesline.
Final answer?
Yeah.
The lariat.
Okay, this is why this is a little misleading, because a lariat is basically a regular clothesline that's usually delivered by someone that's supposed to be cowboy based, hence the lariat. The reason why I called it the ripcord is because on the left, you see how he's holding his wrist?
Yes.
He basically has his stomach to his back. He's going to pull his wrist and turn him around so he's facing him, and then give him the clothesline. That move where you are turning him around by pulling his wrist is called a ripcord. That's why I called it a ripcord clothesline, because on the right is a clothesline. So I disagree with that. That's not a lariat.
Okay, I love it. No, but you know what's so great about this is that you're actually giving it, like, you actually have explanation as to why.
I can't help it, man. It comes out. And again, I just want to remind you, like, this is like wrestling is very stereotypical at times, and that's why they only really call it a lariat if someone that's like from Texas or is like a cowboy uses it. Like, that's why it's kind of strange that the guy on the right, who appears to be of Asian origin, they wouldn't have him call his clothesline a lariat.
Yeah, because they're very thematic in wrestling. In other words, yeah. Got it.
Oh, it's AJ Styles. This is the Styles Clash.
That's correct.
Yeah, this is awesome. It's almost like he's holding him up for like a pile driver, and then he just falls forward. But basically, he jumps though, because look, his legs are off the ground.
Yeah.
So he basically like jumps and falls forward.
Yeah.
And then after they fall and they're both facing the mat, AJ Styles will then roll his body over, and where his legs are now on top of his arms, and his opponent's facing up, and he pins him that way. So it goes right into a pin.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
This is the curb stomp. So that's Seth Rollins. I know it's a violent name, but it's called the curb stomp because basically he's going to press his foot down onto that Dean Ambrose, who's now called Jon Moxley. He's going to basically use his foot to slam his head into the ground.
Yep.
Yeah. So curb stomp.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, here we go.
So this is a spine buster. This is Arn Anderson, who's retired at this point. As you can see, he's like an old fat man. This is called the spine buster. And basically he will throw his opponent into the ropes. When his opponent comes back, he will grab him, lift him off the ground, turn him 180 and slam him down, which is awesome.
Yeah. Spine buster, correct. Awesome. All right, next one. Getting close to the end here.
Frog splash, that's the late Eddie Guerrero, who's one of my favorites of all time. The reason why it's called a frog splash is because he'll start off on the top rope completely straight. As he's jumping, he'll bring his body in, his elbows to his knees, and then when he gets to his opponent, he'll flatten out again, like a frog jumping.
So you said late. He died.
He died in 2006, unfortunately.
Jeez, that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. That's the frog splash.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. And then the last one, this is one I picked deliberately because news.
Razor's Edge. Yep.
Yep.
Unfortunately, what Andy's talking about is Scott Hall, who portrayed Razor Ramon, passed away within the last few weeks, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hall of Famer, also one of my favorites of all time. But yeah, the Razor's Edge, or the Outsider's Edge, when he went to WCW and formed the Outsiders tag team with Kevin Nash. But originally the Razor's Edge. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good one, man. Thank you for putting that in there.
Yeah.
Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, one of my favorites of all time.
You know, what's funny is that, well, good job, by the way. This is,
I got three wrong. I did it, you know?
Yeah, but I love the educated responses, in, acknowledging, the discrepancy with like the name or what have you. So, you still know your stuff, I have to say that. But what I was gonna say though about Razor Ramon, I actually have some affinity towards him because growing up, there were quite a few. I mean, there's always been some really good wrestling video games, like on Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis. Yeah. I remember playing at a friend's birthday party one time, Royal Rumble on Super Nintendo. Yeah. And he was in there, and then eventually I got Royal Rumble for Sega Genesis because I didn't have Super Nintendo as Sega Genesis. And I remember I played with Razor Ramon a lot, and I just remember doing the Razor's Edge, trying to do the Razor's Edge as often as I could, and it was just
as often as you could, yeah.
Yeah, it was
awesome.
Super fun. It was such a great game. And just I just love playing King of the Ring, I think is what it was. Or I think that like the game setting where basically everyone comes in the ring, right? Yep. And you have to be the last one in the ring, basically. And so what it just turns into is you just throw them in the ropes and then throw them out of the ring, right? Is all it turns into. Like there's like all these wrestlers coming in and like one by one, and it gets really crowded, and all you're doing is just
So that's the Royal Rumble. That's the Royal Rumble.
Oh, that is Royal Rumble, yeah.
It starts with two guys, and every like 90 seconds or 2 minutes, a new guy comes in, and you got to throw him over the top rope to win. Last guy standing wins.
Yeah.
That's my favorite event of the year. I always watch that. I love it. It's the best because there's always surprise people that come in. Sometimes they have celebrities, like Pete Rose was in it one year. He showed up. Drew Carey
really?
Showed up one year. Yeah. They'll have old timers that show up. Like Iron Sheik showed up one year. Like they'll have like these like just to pop the crowd. Like so the crowd's like, oh my god, like who's gonna be there this year? There's always like 2 or 3 like surprise people. So,
yes. Yeah. Awesome. Well, amazing. And then so great job, by the way. I'm not surprised at all. It's too bad that we didn't get wrestling at all on Cherries. While any wrestling questions, I mean, we would have definitely would have nailed like for basically every single one at that point.
Yep.
Almost as many as Star Wars. Yeah, and then so I want to ask you another question because we obviously have the NFL draft is about to happen here right now, and you being a Cowboys fan, now you're in, and now you live in the same state as your favorite team, which I'm sure you're super pumped about.
I am.
What are your hopes out of this next NFL draft?
So before we answer that question, I will say it's interesting because here in Austin, they are diehard UT fans, and they don't really seem to care too much about the Cowboys. I was expecting to like walk around the streets and be like, "Hey, Cowboys," and no one really seems to like have that like Cowboy flair. Yeah, like if you go up north to Dallas, probably anywhere else, they're all huge Cowboys fans. But here in Austin, it's all about UT. You know what I mean?
They're like, oh, I'm from California. Oh, welcome. Oh, I'm a Cowboys fan. Get out of here.
Yeah. So again, Austin is very interesting. With the draft. So of course, I'm happy being in Texas because it is Cowboys, and I told my wife, I'm like, look, we're about 3 hours from the stadium, and I'm like, I want to go to at least 2 home games a year. I took my daughter to her first Cowboys game last year when they played the Chargers, which was amazing. My daughter, she just turned 6, so she was 5 at the time, and when we made the plan for her to come with us, it was more of, honestly, I don't care about watching the game anymore. Like my daughter's coming with me, and this is gonna be such a bonding moment for me and my daughter because she's gonna remember going to her first game, and I just want to make sure she's having a good time. And it was funny how just my attention totally shifted from like, oh, I can't wait to watch them play, more of like, I can't wait to go with my daughter and spend the whole day with her, right? And I did. It was really fun, and she was a trooper, man. She made it. She didn't get cranky. She did have to go to the bathroom like 3 times all in the third quarter, and I was like, I didn't really care.
Yeah.
But coming up with the draft, remind me again, is it next week? Is that what's going on?
It's coming really soon.
Yeah, they're like always hit or miss in the draft, man. It's like some years they'll get like a winner. Like last year they got Micah Parsons, who's like a game changer, man. Like he was in the running for like defensive player of the year as a rookie. Mm-hmm. The year before that, they got CeeDee Lamb, who is still very, very good, but they've had years where they've had just duds, like 1 year they drafted like Taco Charlton, who's like out of the league now. It was like a few years ago. So I honestly don't know. And it's like last year was the year. Last year they were built to win the whole thing. Yeah. And they lost a bunch of those guys. And I don't know if they're going to replace them. Like they lost Amari Cooper, which I'm kind of bummed about. I mean, they're talking about getting a wide receiver in the draft, but it's like, I don't know. They lost Randy Gregory. He's kind of a turd anyway, but again, like they haven't made any moves in the free agency, like they almost never do. Yeah, I don't know. Like, and this whole year is a question mark. I feel like Dak, after his calf injury mid-season, wasn't the same. He played better coming off his broken ankle from last year in the first 7 games than he did after this weird calf injury, where I felt like he lost a lot of confidence, and he was just not like, he was very inconsistent. So I just like, being that they're rolling into this new year, I don't know what, no one seems to know what they're doing in the draft. And, they're not as stacked as they were last year. Like, I just, don't be a Cowboys fan, man. It's like, they have yet to make playoffs 2 consecutive years in a row since like 95, 96. Or no, I'm sorry, since like 05, 06, whatever it was, early 2000 with Bill Parcells. So they're always consistently inconsistent, and that's a bummer.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah. Well, I do this, just to kind of challenge what you just said about no one knows what they're doing. I think the Steelers are pretty dead set on getting a quarterback in this draft.
That's good.
That quarterback from Liberty, I think, is on top of
Wait, did you guys have Dwayne Haskins, who just passed away?
Yes.
Okay.
Was
he supposed to be the guy next year?
Or no, because they got Trubisky. Right, but I think they're dead.
Oh yeah,
because Haskins had a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong, Haskins is incredibly talented, but that guy, like, he needs to do some growing up. And I think that I'm not sure where he was at prior to his passing, unfortunately. I know, I think Mike Tomlin tried to mentor him as best as he could, but I just don't know if he was in the right state of mind to take over for Ben Roethlisberger necessarily. Yeah. I think they were honestly looking elsewhere. I think there was just more along the lines of just trying to help him out.
Is Baker Mayfield still around? Did he sign with somebody, or is he still available now?
I can't even remember, honestly. I just thought it was so bizarre that the freaking Browns signed Deshaun Watson and still had Baker Mayfield on the roster. I think.
Well, I mean, not just that, but they signed him for this like crazy contract, right?
Yes.
Wasn't it north of like $200 million?
Yeah,
this is a guy coming off not playing last year and had all these like allegations. I'm like, that's a lot of investment for someone who we just don't know is going to be playing like he used to play. Yes. When do you guys draft? Do you know what order, what position you guys pick?
I have to look it up. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I have to do some research on that. So,
yeah.
But at any rate, Anthony, This was really fun. This is we went pretty long here, almost 2 hours, but it was worth it. I really loved it. Really loved talking with you about this stuff.
Yeah,
Really loved.
of course.
I loved just going through that memory of Cherries Wild. I think
Well,
that
I'll be honest with you. I haven't thought about it for a while. I
yes.
haven't, and I'm actually glad you brought it up, and we got to kind of relive it again because that was very special. So thank you for making that one of our topics to discuss. It was awesome.
For sure. Yeah, it brought back a lot of memories, stuff I even forgot about. Like I totally forgot about you cutting your finger on my watch, for example.
That's right.
Yeah. Or your hand on my watch.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. Then, they had to like wrap it up for me, so I wasn't going to be bleeding during the taping, when they film it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Awesome.
Totally crazy. But again, thank you for stopping by. I know that this is going to be one of many episodes together, so I really appreciate it, really love it, really miss you guys out in Texas. And then
miss you too, man.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you in like what, 2 months now?
Months, yeah. It's gonna be awesome.
All right.
All right, man. All right, brother. Hey, I love you. Have a good one, okay?
You too.
All right, thanks, man.